Now it's your turn to complete the table below by finding three solutions to the equation y equals 1/3 x minus 2. Then plot those three solutions on the graph. If you have not already, stop this video and complete this example in your lecture outline packet. To find three solutions to this equation, we can choose any x value and solve for the y value, or we could choose any y value and solve for the x value. The points you choose might be different than mine, but our resulting graphs should contain the same points. So as we look at choosing an x value or a y value, I see I have y equals 1/3 x minus 2, and one of the values I can choose first that'll be easy to calculate would be to choose x equals 0. So if I choose x equals 0, I now need to find the y value that corresponds with x equals 0 in this equation. So I can calculate that out, and y will be 1/3 times 0 minus 2, which is of course negative 2. That's 1/3 times 0 is just 0. So my y value will be negative 2, and I'll put that in my table. So in the x column of my table I have 0, and in the y column of my table I have negative 2. That means that the xy pair is the point 0, negative 2. Now, as I look at finding another value, that 1/3 times x will be a little problematic if I just choose any random number, in that it'll be kind of hard to plot something like negative 4/3. So I'm instead going to choose x values that are multiples of 3, and that's a technique we'll see that will just help us get some points that are easy to plot. So I'm going to choose 3 as my next x value. And now, so this first one was if x equals 0, I'm going to label my work down here. And now I found that y is negative 2, and so now if x is 3, I'm going to figure out what y is. And so I'll replace x with 3, so I'll have y equals 1/3 times 3 minus 2, and that will simplify down to 1 minus 2, which is simply negative 1. So now in my table, I'm going to put 3 in the column for x and negative 1 in the column for y, and that will correspond to the point 3, negative 1, which I'll put in that third column. For my last point, I'm going to choose 6 for x, as that's also a multiple of 3. So in my x column, I'm going to put 6, and then I'll calculate the corresponding y value. So if x is 6, then when I find y will equal 1/3 times 6 minus 2, and that will simplify to 2 minus 2, which will give me 0. So in the y column, I'll now put 0, and that will correspond to the point 6, 0, which I'll put in that third column. Now I'm ready to create my graph, and I want to make sure that I scale and label these axes so that all of the points I found will fit. So I'm going to draw my axes in, and then I'll scale and label them. And I'll put those axes through the center of this grid. So I'm drawing straight lines through the center. And then I'll label each with the variables that I'm using, which are x and y. And I can see that for, I have a 6 by 6 grid here, and the biggest x value that I chose was 6, so I'll just label these so that each tick mark represents one unit. And so I'm just going to mark off 3 and 6. I could label each one if I wanted. That'd be more writing than I had to do. I'm just going to label them at regular intervals. So I've got 3 and 6, and then on the left side of this x-axis, I'll also label a negative 3 and a negative 6. And on the lower side of that y-axis, I'll also label a negative 3 and a negative 6. Now I'm ready to plot my points. I'm going to plot the point 0, negative 2. So x is 0 and y is negative 2. I'll go to where x is 0 and y is negative 2, and that actually puts me on that y-axis. Next, I'll go to the point 3, negative 1. So I'm going where x is 3 and y is negative 1. And I'll plot that point. And then finally, I'll go to the point 6 is 0. So I'm going to where x is 6 and y is 0, and I'll plot that one. Now I'm going to connect these, and I can see that they're following a pattern of a straight line. So I'll grab a straight line and put it through them. In general with these, I'm going to put arrows on the end of each one to show that it continues on. I could have picked any x or y value there. And then I can also label the equation right on it. This is helpful oftentimes when we're graphing more than one line, and that is the graph of our line.